We are now at week 48 of our journey through the Word. Last week, we witnessed the fall of the northern kingdom of Israel. And now, between the time of the fall of the northern kingdom and the annihilation and the fall of the kingdom of Judah, we have about 135 years. And we're going to walk through these 135 years, and we will be introduced to 7 more kings who are kings of Judah. This week, we will look at each of their reigns. We will continue to look at the reign of Hezekiah, who was a good king and did all he could to eradicate Baalism and idol worship from the land. The sad part is, on the very heels of Hezekiah's reign comes the reign of his son Manasseh, who was a very wicked king and reestablishes all that his father had tried to rid from the land. And quickly after Manasseh, we find Josiah. Josiah is Manasseh's son. And once again, we find an amazing king, a good king, even greater than the things that Hezekiah had done. And so Hezekiah's grandson obviously embraced his grandfather's beliefs and his values. And Josiah does more than any king before him, and brings down the high places and rids the land of the Asherahs and the Baals and the other gods. But then we have Jehoaz, Josiah's son, and he becomes king after Josiah's death, and once again a wicked king who once again reestablishes all that his father had ridded the land of. And from the reign of Jehoaz, we find that the decline of Judah becomes more rapid, and it continues to stay evil before God. There is not another good king after Josiah. And so Josiah's son, Jehoaz, is an evil king. And then comes Jehoiakim. He's also known as Eliakim, but his name is changed to Jehoiakim. And Jehoiakim, once again, a bad king, and also a son of Josiah. And then we have Jehoiakim, who was Josiah's brother. And once again, he follows in the footsteps of the evil kings. And then we have the last king of Israel, Zedekiah. And Zedekiah also was a son of Josiah. And so the 5 kings that reigned at the end of the kingdom of Judah, out of those 5 kings, you have Josiah, and then you have 3 sons of Josiah, and you have a brother of Josiah. Out of the 3 sons of Josiah, you're going to see that 2 of them were full brothers, and 1 of them was a half brother to them. Remember, I had said, watch for the names of the mothers. And so how do we know that one of them was a half brother to the other 2? Just look at the names. We know that all 3 were sons of Josiah, but we know that 2 of them had the same mother. And so again, this week begins with Hezekiah's reign, and it was during his reign that the kingdom of Israel fell. And you would think that the awareness of what God did to the kingdom of Israel, the northern kingdom, would certainly put the fear of God in the southern kingdom. And we see Hezekiah was a good king who clung to Yahweh and to his ways. And he does all that he can to completely cleanse the land of false gods and religious mixtures. And it's during the time of Hezekiah that we hear the prophecy of Isaiah. Isaiah prophesied during the time of the reigns of Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. And now during this time of Hezekiah, we still see that even though you have a good king there, that Sennacherib, king of Assyria, comes against the cities of Judah, and there is a spiraling down. So why during the time of a good king do these things happen? You know, one of the things we need to hear this word even for our day and for our generation. A good king can cleanse the idols from a land, but it cannot cleanse idolatry from men's hearts. As much as we want to vote in godly leaders and godly governors in our land and godly prime ministers and presidents and leaders. The reality is that unless the hearts of the people are changed, then that idolatry and the wickedness that are in men's hearts will continue. And so I watch in my own land and in my own country. We've just come through elections, and as much as I wanted to see certain ones elected that I felt would bring in certain values, the reality is we've got 50% of my nation, at least, that have grabbed hold of the evil that's in this world today, who think nothing of taking the life of unborn babies. And what do you do now? What do we do when we have people in the land that this is their heart's desire? We want what we want. We want to serve our gods the way we want to serve our gods. The gods of ancient times have not left this planet. And truly, they are turning men's hearts back to their evil ways. Manasseh, Hezekiah's son, becomes king and quickly rebuilds all that his father has torn down. He not only reinstates all that his father had eradicated, but he adds to the evils and brings these detestable forms of worship right into the temple. Following on the footsteps of this wickedness, now we see the people. There certainly are people whose hearts are towards God, and we see that they make Josiah, Manasseh's son, king. And once again, we see the pendulum swing the other way. Josiah is there's not been another king like him since the time of David. And there will certainly not be another king like him afterwards. He orders the cleansing of the temple. He brings down all the high places. And while they're cleansing the temple, they find a book of the law that's been hidden in the temple. When they bring the book to Josiah, and Josiah recognizes how far short they've fallen from keeping God's word, and also recognizes the warnings that God has said, if you do this, then this is what I am going to do. Josiah calls together the priests and the elders and the people of Jerusalem, and he has them all enter into a covenant with Yahweh to keep his commandments, his testimonies, and his statutes. And he again has a cleansing of the temple to rid the temple of all that had been brought into it, and all the mixture and the idolatry that had been brought into the temple. Might be interesting if we come before God and say, God, what mixture and what idolatrous ways do we have even in our church today? God, before we want the world to be cleansed, we need to look at our own place. Judgment begins with the house of God. God, what is in the church that does not bring you pleasure? We also see that Josiah reinstates the commemoration of Passover throughout the kingdom of Judah. It says that there had not been a Passover like this since the time of the judges. And so God sends word to Josiah through Jeremiah the prophet, who is now the prophet during these last 5 kings. And he prophesies to him that in spite of all these efforts, God is still going to bring the judgment. He says, I won't bring it in your day, but I am still going to bring the judgment. Why? Why, when Josiah has been so good and such a good king and brought such reformation to the land? Once again, Josiah could bring reformation to the land, but he couldn't bring reformation to the people's hearts. How quickly, after Josiah is killed by Pharaoh Necho, ruler of Egypt, and his son Jehoiaz is brought into his place and made king, how quickly they turn back to their idols and their wickedness, and that wickedness perpetuates. It's during the reign of these last 5 kings that Jeremiah's ministry is active. We see it begin with Josiah, and then through Jehoaz, the son of Uzziah, and Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, and Jehoiakim, the brother of Josiah, and last Zedekiah, the son of Josiah. And we also see that Jeremiah's time of prophecy, even after Zedekiah, the last king, is taken off to Babylon, we find that Nebuchadnezzar puts Gedaliah into a governorship in Judah, and Jeremiah prophesies during his time. Who is Jeremiah? Well, his name means exalted of God, exalted of Yah. He's from the priestly family line that lives in Anathoth, which is a suburb of Jerusalem in the territory of Benjamin. We know he was young when he began prophesying, but we really don't know how young. His job description, when God comes to him and calls him, he says, I've called you to pluck up, to break down, to destroy, to overthrow, to build, and to plant. As much as we want all the prophecies of God to be all about building and planting, there are times God says, I can't plant in the middle of this. I have to break up. I have to pluck up. I have to destroy. I have to overthrow. And then we will have new beginnings. And so God brings focus to Jeremiah as he speaks to Jeremiah. He says, Jeremiah, what do you see? Jeremiah responds, I see the branch of an almond tree. And then God goes on to tell him, I am watching over my word to perform it. As we read this in the English, we do get understanding from it, but there is such a beautiful play on words in the Hebrew that's totally lost as we read this in English. When God says to Jeremiah, what do you see? Jeremiah's reply is, I see sheched. Sheched, it's a noun. And what does it mean? It's the word for almond, but it literally means and comes from a verb which means to watch or to wake. The reason the almond tree was called sheched, or to watch or to wake, is because it's the first tree that blooms in the spring, and because its fruit is shaped like an eye. When God responds to Jeremiah, it says in Jeremiah 1:12, then Yahweh said to me, you have seen well, for I am watching over my word to perform it. Look at that, for I am watching, shachad. The word watching in Hebrew is shachad. This is the verb from which we get the term almond or to watch, sheched. And so God says, what do you see? I see sheched. And God says, well, you need to know I am shachad. I am watching over my word. God is making sure that he does what he says he will do. And so God comes to Jeremiah during Josiah's time and says, go tell Josiah that I am watching my word. I must do what I say I will do. Near the end of the week, we are going to watch the fall of Jerusalem and the fall of the temple. We are going to see when Zedekiah is taken captive, and the last thing that he sees is when they kill his sons and they pluck out his eyes. That will be the last memory, the last sight memory that he has. What a horrible thing to have to live with in your mind for the rest of your life. And so we find that Jerusalem comes under siege from the 9th year of Zedekiah to the 11th year of Zedekiah's reign. We also know the exact day when the final blow comes to the kingdom of Judah. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the city was taken, and on the 7th day of the 5th month, the temple was burned. The walls are broken down. The bronze pillars and the sea of bronze are broken into pieces. We see the destruction of the family and the family line and the kingdom line of Judah. What a sad way to end our week. We will end our week with our introduction to Jeremiah, and we're going to shift over to the book of Jeremiah and hear Jeremiah's words during this dreadful time. We are going to hear God's pleadings with his people. I pray that as we go through Jeremiah, that we will let Jeremiah's words examine our hearts. I pray that God will enlighten you this week on your journey, and that throughout it, he will give you hope, that we will be able to stand in the dark days ahead. God be with you. See you next week.